There are too many Pokemon, or are there? There's a lot of them.
There is over 1,000 Pokemon now here in Generation 9. I didn't.
Can you believe that they made the 1,000th Pokemon like a random thing? The 1,000th Pokemon is question mark. Okay, I thought Sarah would be more helpful. So we assume that the 1,000th Pokemon is Tinkertink, but Tinkertink is behind these legendaries in the Pokedex? This is so gross. Is it just completely unorganized right now? Oh, that's gross.
Didn't think they'd do it. I thought they'd save the number for Generation 10, but there are now over 1,000 Pokemon.
Over 150.
Yeah, you can say that again, Ash. Over 150. Oh.
Wow, that's so many. I don't know how I'll be able to catch 150. In fact, I'll probably just not do it because that's way too many. And they're all animals, and you have to, like, pay for their food and stuff? I don't know. It seems like a terrible idea to keep all of them and catch them all, actually. That sounds like a thing you should do if you're rich or in a better economy. But right now, can't even afford to have kids out here.
Pokemon Master is my destiny.
He's having a rough time.
There are now over 1,000 different species of Pokemon, and I'm genuinely kind of a little bit shocked. I didn't think they would do this until Generation 10 on the, what I assume to be the 30th anniversary release of Pokemon. This is
yeah, Gen 9, listen, what they should have done with Gen 9 is just do the starters, have the sushi Pokemon, maybe a few Paradoxmons, Koraidon and Miraidon, boom, call it a day. We don't need Bombardier or Wattrel or Pomo or Palma or Palmy. Dude, this is all the same Pokemon. You can't convince me that this evolution line is not one Pokemon. It is literally just one.
Of course, Gen 9, and 9 is a hard number to market, so why bother with the 1,000 Pokemon now when we can hit that milestone and make a big deal out of it later? I'm genuinely kind of surprised that they did it, but they did. We now have over 1,000 species of Pokemon. Although, that said, and by the way, I'm obviously about to spoil some late game Pokemon for Scarlet and Violet here, so
uh-oh.
Go away. I'm gonna give you a couple little seconds, and then we're gonna make sure that we get into, because we need to talk about these Pokemon.
Yeah, I already brought the Pokedex, Toby. It's okay.
There are like 16 Pokemon that are what you would call paradox Pokemon. These are past and future variants of pre-existing Pokemon, and so whether they're considered forms or completely separate, they have their own Dex entries separate of the Pokemon, obviously, in the game. But I wonder.
I think this is a good way to do it. I think they are probably running towards a problem where you can't just keep making new things over and over again, or it begins to feel the same. So they've done a big brain thing, and they're like, okay, if things are going to feel similar to each other anyway, why don't we make it like that on purpose? That way people won't yell at us because there's a new Pokemon that looks like an old Pokemon or functions in the same way, because we can just say, well, actually, we meant to do that, so you have no grounds to stand on.
When it comes to Pokemon Home, when these Pokemon are integrated, will these count towards that 1,000 Pokemon total? If they don't, I think that puts us at like 992, I think, or thereabouts. Someone will do the maths at some point. Which means
they have to count them as new Pokemon because they have like completely different names. I don't know how you could get away with that. They have completely different stats, type-ins, names. The only thing that they have that resembles the two is that the fact that they look kind of similar. Which, I mean, you literally already had Love Disc and Alamamola. They look kind of similar, but they were different. So
we could probably hit 999 or 1,000 in the DLC. And I guess that's what I want to talk about here, is I think that will be the case. I think when these Pokemon hit Pokemon Home, they will actually reduce the number of Pokemon in the Pokedex. These Pokemon will become forms, and so we won't go over that 1,000 mark. It's still technically speculation as to whether they are separate Pokemon or not. Speculation that may be resolved throughout some story.
If they wanted to make it a form, they would have just kept the same name, right?
DLC upcoming Scarlet and Violet. If that's the case, then I would expect the first Pokemon of Generation 10, or the final Pokemon of this generation, whether it's a mythical or a DLC or a Legendsmon or whatever in the future, that to be Pokemon number 1,000. It could be a really interesting point for the series as a whole as well. A chance for Pokemon to...
Yeah, I think it would make more sense. And also, you could do so much marketing. Oh my god. You could literally do a trailer that's like, Pokemon number 1,000 has finally been revealed. And how many views would that get? 1,000 Pokemon. People would come across the world to watch that YouTube video. They would log onto their grandma's accounts to watch that one.
Or do something new or do something different. The last, I guess, big milestone after 151 would be 500. And Pokemon 500 was reached during the Unova arc. In fact,
Pokemon number 500 was, wait, it was a starter. It was, I'm gonna take a guess here. Serperior?
Pokemon number 500 is Emboar, so really
oh, it was on the screen. Now I feel dumb.
early on. It's like the 6th Pokemon in the Unova Pokedex. And Pokemon Black and White was a sort of point of reboot for the franchise. It was a point when they felt that there were a lot of Pokemon coming up, and actually, Generations 1 to 4 are a relatively consistent package, with Generation 5
They put way too many Pokemon in Generation 5. I know they were trying to do like a reboot, but 156? That's way too many. And also, most of them are awful. I vote that we actually just go back and we just delete some of the Gen 5 ones. I think that it'll be okay. I don't think anyone would actually notice. Trust me, no one would notice if we just, for example, went back and we deleted like the Cincino line. We could get rid of the Ducklet line. We could get rid of all the Dealings, because did anyone care about those? We could just get rid of those. You could probably get rid of Frillish, Alamamoli, you don't need that. Kling Clang, you don't need that line. We could trim so much fat out of this gen.
being a soft reboot, with many of the Pokemon appearing in that generation to be spiritual successors to pre-existing Pokemon. You've got Gigalith, which is like the new version of Golem, or Conkeldurr, which is the new version of
the
Machamp,
better version, actually.
Seismitoad, which is the new version of Politoed.
Yeah, worse version.
Which is Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. It was a
Yeah, we could trim those as well. We don't need those.
Gen 1 that reappeared in Generation 5 as Pokemon.
Delete the ice cream, please. Absolutely fucking not. The ice cream stays. How dare you even suggest that as a possibility?
As a whole kept growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Previous Pokemon lost their place, their sense of identity as the Rock Golem Pokemon or the Frog Water Pokemon. With over 1,000 Pokemon now, I do wonder where the franchise is gonna go in the future. Is there a stopping point for this? Is there a Generation 15 where we hit 1,510 Pokemon 10 times?
Yeah, I mean, obviously. What do you think? Where does this go? Of course, this goes until it doesn't make money anymore, okay? As long as it is printing dollar bills, this is not going anywhere. There could be 10,000 Pokemon. As long as they're still selling plushies, then they are happy. There is no problem.
Times what we originally had in Generation 1. Is there a
It all
point
comes
where
down
we
to money.
start to, given the results of like Dexit and having to produce games with less Pokemon in to try and account for the quality of the game and make sure the quality is going to be good, is there a point
Oh, that's funny. That's a good one, Toby. The quality.
where we just say, no, we need to be even more selective with the Pokemon that end up in the game? Games like
All right, okay. To be more specific, I know I made a little joke there and laugh, but to be honest, I think that it's a good idea that they cut the decks in order to focus on actually making a game that is supposedly more fun and better to play. I think that if they spent more development time on making sure that every Pokemon was able to be in the game, even though you wouldn't use them, let's be honest, you're not going to use every single one, and you have Pokemon Home to throw them all in the box in anyway. What does it make a difference if it's in the box in Scarlet and Violet or in the box in Pokemon Home? It makes absolutely no difference. I think it's better that they do that, because if they didn't, could you imagine how much of a mess Scarlet would have been and Violet would have been if they had to program every single Pokemon into the game as well as do everything else? They can't. They're struggling, man. They're struggling so hard. They're just a small indie company, guys. They don't have enough funding to do it. Jokes aside, it doesn't matter that they're not all in the game. I think that anyone that says they really, really need them all to be in the game is capping. I think they're coping a little bit. I think they're making a problem where there isn't one because they want to be angry at something specific and they can't think of anything more specific to be angry at.
Pokemon Legends Arceus or Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, they just have a much smaller.
There's plenty of
Pokedex.
things to be
Generally
angry about.
Don't bother me. Pokemon Colosseum
In these
is one of my
games, and it's not
favorite
that.
Pokemon games of all time, and it's
Based.
a game that really doesn't feature that many Pokemon in the actual games, and obviously all of the Pokemon are programmed into the games. But if they weren't, it wouldn't have fully ruined my enjoyment of the games either.
Yeah, it doesn't change your experience of Pokemon Colosseum if Blastoise isn't in it, because you don't see Blastoise anywhere anyway.
I wonder, as we approach the actual kind of 1,000 mark, and I mean, we're already well over when you consider all the different forms and variations of Pokemon.
The problem becomes where they have their favorites. If you cut some, then you have to cut some favorites. And if someone's favorite's not in the game, then they get mad, because they want their personal one to be in it. They don't care if all the Pokemon aren't in the game, but they do care if the one that they like isn't in there. It's not a case of, oh, I want every single one because I'm going to use every single one. It's, I just want my guys. everything else is, I don't care about that because we inherently roll a little bit selfish.
I do wonder how that's going to play into the franchise going forward, especially as we come towards that 30th anniversary in just 4 years' time. In 2026, this series is going to be 30 years old, and this is very much the point where we're now at that 1,000 mark, where Pokemon has to decide what it's going to be for the next 30 years, the next 30 to 50. Is it going to be a game that continues to release generation after generation, re-releasing a brand new Rock Golem Pokemon every single generation that's just slightly different, which we've now got with the Nacli evolution line? Or is it going to be something that takes this wide roster of characters, these new generations, and starts to only really drip feed in new characters and new Pokemon very, very selectively?
I mean, they do have so much to work with already, but the problem is, you can't market something if it's just more of the same, right? I mean, they can. They're very good at marketing something that's very good, more of the same. And they're very good at marketing to nostalgia as well. So maybe I'm wrong. I feel like it's way harder to convince someone to buy something if you don't bring something new to the table. Where if you're just using the reason the same stuff all over and again, people will lose any kind of respect they have for the franchise because they don't feel like it's bringing anything new, and they'll slowly just begin to come away and they'll not play it anymore. They'll not buy the games. It won't be one specific game that turns them off, like, oh, well, they made a remake and it wasn't a very good remake, aka BDSP, but they might buy the next game because there's all new things in it. If you don't add that new thing, that new shiny sparkly object that keeps people interested, then over time people just don't care anymore. They just don't care. You can't just do a FIFA 23. Not with this. I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong, to be honest.
Legends Arceus game that takes a whole different approach.
I might be wrong. The
Pokemon
FIFA sells
game,
insane numbers. You're right.
This generation, with the graphical issues that come with it, that has faced a lot of criticism over its last couple of generations of exactly how game production is being handled. If there was a point for change in the series, I think it will be something that we see over these next 4 to 5 years. And I think going into the 30th anniversary, it might even be the last big opportunity that Pokemon has to pivot into trying something new, to re-establishing what the next 10 years or 20 years are going to look like. 1,000 Pokemon is not just some symbolic number. 1,000 Pokemon is a big deal. It's a point where 151, if that felt like a lot, we're now into the 4 digits. Pokemon.
Yeah, the normies, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what the hell all of these different things are. They don't know what an Iron Treads is. If someone just played it back in the day, they're like, oh yeah, I know Pokemon. He's got like Mewtwo and they got like Slowpoke. I really like Slowpoke. It was cool. And then you start talking about all the Salamences. Or even maybe they know the Salamences. And then you start talking about the Mega Evolutions. And maybe they know the Mega Lucarios. And then you start talking about the totems. Like, the totems? What is a totem? I don't know what that is. And then you start talking about the Paradox forms. And it's like, what the hell is a Paradox form? And then they start talking about the Hisuian forms, which is actually different to Sinnoh, because Hisui is actually like the old version of Sinnoh, but that was only in the one game. That they didn't come through in the other games. And then you start talking about all the other different forms and variations that come out after that as well. And then it's too much. There's so fucking much in this. You have to focus. You have to just focus on a smaller part of it, which is what the new games do, right? That's why they cut out Mega Evolution. That's why they cut out the Z-moves. That's why they cut out all the stuff from the other games. Because if you get too much, you get too confusing, then the normies are just, their brain melts. And then even my brain melts because I start to lose track of all of this stuff too. And I do this stuff for a living. I literally play these games and watch these videos for a living. And I don't even know what all of the Generation 8 Pokemon are called yet.
Pokemon is a big money-making franchise. And it makes its money very often based on these characters and based on pumping out and creating more of these characters. The question comes up, what are they going to do in like 30 years? Will there be 2,000 Pokemon? Is that future even possible? Or
yeah.
While another generation is
absolutely
possible, is this 3-year cycle really sustainable? Is it something that they now want to slow down on and take the 1,000 designs that they've got and re-implement them into specific ways and specific new games? Games like Legends Arceus that just deal with these 4 generations.
Bro, they released BDSP, Legends Arceus, and Scarlet and Violet all within the space of 1 year. Like, I know they were made by different companies, but they do not want to slow down. They want to pump out more content. They have only been speeding up. They've only ever sped up the amount of stuff that they release because it just works. They make so much money from it.
And a couple of others that appear appear in Legends Arceus. Maybe they want to do other games that just take the Pokemon of Unova and Johto and stitch them together, or just the Pokemon of Kanto and Alola and stitch them together. Could they tell new, different, interesting stories, or will they keep on releasing the same cycle of games?
I think Legends series is like an easy way to go, but the problem being that the Legends series did not sell nearly as well as Scarlet and Violet did. Like, immediately, as soon as the game came out, Scarlet and Violet outsold Legends Arceus, and you could say because there's 2 copies, but most people only buy one. Only the weird degenerates like me buy both copies. The main series stuff, the stuff that kind of doesn't deviate, is technically financially a better idea. Like, for example, for me, if I were to do a Nuzlocke reaction video, I know that would do better than a really interesting, weird, wacky new idea that might be a little bit different that people aren't used to on YouTube. That would generally do better. Something that's tried and true generally does better, and that you can see that in the sales numbers for the new games too.
I can't help but feel that a lot of the
Legends Arceus sold really well, though it did sell well, but it didn't sell as well. See, Nintendo has announced today that the global sales of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has surpassed 10 million combined units in the first 3 days of their worldwide launch. The first 3 goddamn days, according to Nintendo. This includes both package and downloadable versions. The first 3 days, they already have outsold everything. Up to Sun and Moon. They're getting on Legends Arceus. This is Legends Arceus sales after, what, like 10 months, 11 months? In 3 days, they just beat that. They just killed it. And also, they have Christmas coming up as well. Oh my god, they have Christmas coming up. It is over for Legends Arceus. The thing is dead. It's just going to settle, like, in a year, it's going to be up here. It's going to be over Diamond and Pearl easily.
The audience that really is in love with Pokemon, that grew up with Pokemon, the people my age, the people like you who are watching, who are maybe, and I mean, statistically speaking, in your mid-20s, maybe you're in your 30s, maybe you're a teenager, but you grew up with Pokemon. Are you going to be able to keep up with over 1,000 Pokemon and want to continue to...
I do this as a job and I can't keep up with it now. I mean, maybe I'm just bad at my job, though.
Buy in generation after generation. I guess these are questions I'm more asking myself. But I think 1,000 is a very big and important number for the Pokemon franchise. And I do wonder if it's time for them to slow down in creating new Pokemon, as much as I absolutely love to see new Pokemon, and start telling new stories with the creatures that they do have. This is just a little thought, a little ramble. I wanted to do something for this kind of 1,000 Pokemon mark. Whether we've actually hit it or not, I guess we won't properly know till Pokemon Home is out and
So they haven't announced the national dex numbers. That's why we don't know until Pokemon Home comes out. That's crazy to me that they didn't update Pokemon Home as soon as the game came out, but I guess they couldn't release a game that ran correctly as well, so maybe it's not that crazy. But hey, anyway, make sure you subscribe to more patterrz, and what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks, see you later.